Right, morning, gents. How are we doing?
Good, thanks, mate. Yeah.
Good, good. So today we've got Will Sandilands from ABR Festival.
Right.
Will, tell us a little bit about your role and how you came together.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So I started. Well, actually, I was working in recruitment about 7 years ago, and I phoned up Alan Davies, who started our business 27 years ago, and tried to sell him recruitment services, and then he essentially offered me a job, and I went to work for him instead. Didn't sell him any recruitment services, but yeah, I got a job out of it, so it's kind of the wrong way around. But it was when I joined a magazine company, and I was selling advertisements in the magazine and some online social media marketing solutions. And Adventure Bike Rider was really, really successful, and we had a rally every year where we just got some of the readers together, and Alan would be flipping burgers, and we'd have TV on with sports on, and it was great fun, but it was never really a commercial thing. It was just a celebration of ABR, and it was a couple hundred people in a field. And then we thought we could do a bit more with it, and then we had 500 people in the same field, and that was the maximum you could go to back then. But we had Ducati came along and did test rides, and they got a lot out of it, and we had Triumph there with a few bikes, and Rally Raid came as well and had a few bikes, and we thought, okay, this could be something. And in 2019, we moved it to Ragley Hall in South Warwickshire. Amazing stately home, and it's a proper luxury place, magnificent venue, which the motorcycle industry never really had before that. It's always been car parks and burger vans and things. And the response was amazing. We had 2,500 people there that year. It's grown every single year since, except 2020, where we couldn't go ahead. And in 2023, we'll be about 12,500 people now. And it's all kind of luxury motorcycling and chaps in their 50s and 60s getting together and having a great time. It's the one thing we always hear is what a brilliant event it is. So, yeah, it's good.
Nice. And so what exactly is your role?
So I sell anything that's business to business, and I do all the catering relationships as well. So I look after the catering, the bar, and then all the stands that attend, and every partnership that we do. So it's quite a broad role, but yeah, a member of the team or me will do every single deal there, and I also look after the guys that still do the advertising and the marketing solutions that we do, the magazines and the video podcasts and things like that we also run. So ABR is more than just a festival; it's a proper brand.
So how did you come along Fee Streat during your search for caterers? How did that happen?
Well, I think I actually known Fee Streat because I live in Stratford-upon-Avon, and Fee Streat is normally there probably once a week, I'd say. And they're always around. So I already knew of them, and I think I actually met you at the first time this year. Right?
Yes, that's right.
I think so, probably. You were dealing with somebody else before, but I was always knew of Fee Streat. I think everybody in my hometown does, met Ryan this year, and that's kind of how we were introduced.
What was the process like of getting to know each other, and how did that relationship sort of flourish? How did it begin? It
was funny. 2021 will always be remembered for us as the year of the queue. It was such a frustrating year for us. Not really anyone's fault. We were fresh out of lockdown. It was a week after lockdown, and we clambered together a festival. And we were. Oh, I've just flicked a spring. We managed to get this thing together, and it was a massive risk. Alan took the decision he was going to go ahead, and he knew there was going to be big risks with it. But the world was crying out for something at that point. People wanted to get together, they wanted to ride bikes, and we were going to have a great weekend and have a really good time. And Ryan was able to come and do everything that he could, but the demand was huge. And we had massive queues for the bar, massive queues for test rides on the bikes, queues for food, everything. And I think the first time I ever came across Ryan, he was just, we're going to sort this, and it was just, I'm aware of the issues we had, but we'll never let that happen again. And this year was, it was a dream, wasn't it? We had too little queue this year. We want a healthy queue next year. So that's kind of how I was introduced to Ryan, was as a problem solver.
From the customer's perception, though, like it was, it's fixed, wasn't it? And it was great because, when I spoke to Alan initially before I met Will, he was very clear that the guys had one opportunity to put it right because of after the year of the queue, as Will calls it, you know, they had a lot of backlash from their customers just saying, you know, look, this is an amazing event, you know, just what we need, just what we're looking for, just what we don't have, but it takes too long to get something to eat, it takes too long to get a drink, you know, and we're queuing for absolutely everything. And I think there wasn't a single person on that site that year that got it right, really, because we just weren't. I think probably there was two things. One, we probably weren't expecting the demand after COVID to be quite so high.
Yeah.
And I think two, possibly from not working large scale shows for a while, a lot of the contractors, myself included, that came in there, possibly became a little bit complacent, maybe, from, you know, sitting around and not doing anything large scale, or, you know, doing pop-ups and things to try and survive. So going straight back into that, and then, you know, probably the only way to describe it is getting absolutely walloped, you know, and the queue times were too long. But, you know, we all sat down after that, and the guys went out to their customers and just said, without doubt, this will be fixed, so bear with us. You know, straight after COVID, didn't quite get it right. There was a lot of hands up, wasn't there, Will, in that, just saying, no excuses made, but we'll fix it.
We knew who we wanted to work with again after that year. It was clear straight away,
And we did put it right. We got it right. So, you know, so from this year, there was no queues at all. And the customers were really happy. And that's actually, you've had the opposite reaction, haven't you, this time?
100%. I mean, if you post something now, there'll still be people from 2021 go, what were the queues like? Every single time, and they just get inundated with, not a problem, it was sorted. You know, we don't have to fix that problem now. It's done. Yeah, we've parked it, and we just manage it going forwards, which is a great position to be in. I think the other thing that was against people a little bit that 2021 year was the type of audience. You know, we knew who they were. We knew that they were going to come with panniers instead of cars, so they didn't have as much space for, you know, bringing their own food and beer and things like that. We knew demand was going to be big. So it was just one of those things where adventure bikers tend not to be the same as there's camper cooling at the same venue this weekend. They're going to turn up with a camper van full of food. Yeah. They're not necessarily going to be as hungry. So it was a learning curve, but we were thrilled we got to go ahead. I think most people had a great weekend. There was just a bit of a connotation, which this year we managed to get rid of. So it's really good.
Did you find that that adventure bike riders in general are a slightly different demographic to kind of feed and to service? What are they like? What are they like as a customer?
They're 50, 60-year-old blokes. They really are. You could draw one, and they all look pretty much like that. Do you know what I mean? They're very, very, very similar, and they're all great guys. What's great about Alan, who still owns the business, is he is one. You know, and every gut feeling and every instinct that he has tends to be right. So he's exactly that sort of audience. But you know, it's chaps that have spent their whole life raising kids, paying off mortgages, working hard, not having free time, and then they go, you know, what have I always wanted to do? I've wanted to buy a BMW GS and ride down to the Alps and stay in 5-star hotels and ride the Stelvio Pass, Strat Floridas in Wales. It's not as popular, but you know, those are the sort of guys that are doing it, and they are really, really easygoing, really friendly crowd. Most of them are professional. They've worked in banks or whatever for most of their life, but they're also really open and honest, and you know, the master classes and the instructions that we give are really popular because they're kind of past that arrogant, egotistical stage. And it's the same with the food, the approach to their food. You know, they're not set in their ways. They're happy to try new things. You know, the Jamaican food that we did was really popular this year. They'll try anything, to be honest with you. Some of them like a burger and chips, and some of them want we actually had people wanting more vegan and vegetarian food this year. So there's no demographic in terms of what they want to eat.
Is the demand for vegan and vegetarian food, is that a fairly new trend, or is that kind of a gradual increase or anything like that?
It was mentioned a couple of times, which is quite a bit, you know, because we really didn't get a lot of complaints at all this year. I think we had a 99.7% satisfaction rate from our survey. Nice. So really, really high, and the food was constantly up there being mentioned as one of the best things. And that's what we spoke to Ryan about for 2023. You know, we want to keep that kind of street food variety feel because people loved it, and they like the changing quality. One thing that is immediately obvious when you deal with caterers, you have to get your head around, is the two types of caterers, and that is your, I don't want to call them amateur because that's not fair, but weekend caterers. You know, the chaps that have converted a horse box or whatever it is, doesn't have to be a horse box, but they're great cooks, a lot of them. They're fantastic. They make amazing food, but they have a job in the week, and they're doing this at the weekend because they enjoy going to the festivals. They enjoy that environment, and if they make a few £100 out of it, it's thumbs up because they've got a job doing something else. but the rate that they can churn food out, their access to resource, if things do go wrong or whatever, is not the same. Whereas you also then get professional people that literally just do that constantly, and that's it's difficult because you kind of want a bit of a mixture, I guess, but there's only so much capacity for those smaller ones.
So what are the challenges for you, like for when you're booking in all these different street food traders and all the catering? What are the main challenges for you?
It's difficult to know. I mean, we're in a better position now, but the last year when I was doing it, it was difficult to know who we could trust because we've been let down by a couple the year before, and there were a few. And you know, Alan will tell the classic story that Alan would 100% tell if he was here. Was he walked past one of them? I won't say who it was. And he says, "How was last night?" And the guy said, "Oh, it wasn't great, mate." And he'd watched him close up shop at 3 o'clock the day before because he'd sold out of all of his food. And the guy, all right, fair enough, he might have been trying to get a cheaper deal the next year or whatever. But he just felt like, okay, I can't even have a genuine conversation with you now. So it was a bit kind of difficult. And we've worked it out quite quickly who we can rely on. And it's such an important part of any event that you really can't afford to let it go, you know, just hope everything's okay. But yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge is knowing, okay, what are people actually capable of? Because they're always going to over-egg it because they want to be as busy as they possibly can be. And, you know, what do we know and are confident in? And that's probably taken some time to get a grip on. You know, how much I think next year will be, we talked about it again, didn't we, Ryan? Because there was no queuing this year, I wouldn't be surprised if nobody brings food next year. Whereas because we had queuing in 2021, there were people there this year that did bring food. So it's almost like a double change where there would be nobody bringing food when there was. So it will be far busier next year, even with the same number, but we've also got more people. So it's just kind of, I think we've got good people. There's a few companies now we can go to, trust them implicitly. The bar was absolutely perfect this year. The guys that run the bar, we have one supplier do the bar.
Who are the guys that run the bar?
It's a company called Moon Gazing Hair. They run the Fleece Inn at Bretforton as well. And exactly the same issues. You know, the gut chap, Nigel, really great bloke. And the year after the year of the queue, he came in and said, you know, we're going to work together and we're going to get this right for you. And he did. You know, this year absolutely crushed it. A few things, sort of learning curves in terms of where we place bars and stuff like that. But, you know, his variety of beer was excellent. His service was fantastic. The staff were all exceptional. And there was, you know, a really healthy, nice queue around the bar where people stood and talked about what they'd done that day, waited 5 minutes and got a beer. It was perfect. Absolutely crushed it. And it's, again, it's a music festival with motorbikes, really. So it does become a kind of really important aspect to it if you can get a beer in time.
That's exactly what it's like, isn't it? It's before, like, I'd ever heard anybody at ABR describe it like that. It was the first time I'd been to like a bike or car or motor-powered style show where it felt like it was a music festival, but not directly all about bands. It was about motorbikes or, you know, something completely different from music first. But there was like people walking around dressed like they're going to a music festival. They got the wellies on, you know, it wasn't even muddy, but they got the wellies on, you know, and the shorts, and they were like, you know, wandering around with a beer in their hand. And I was like, it's actually like being at a music festival, but, you know, so it's got that vibe about it, which is really nice. But I think the balance, because obviously ABR as a festival is very new. And they've grown it really quickly because of doing it right and quickly acting on those issues and fine-tuning them. And I think kind of got to a point now for 2023, it should be the sweet spot really, shouldn't it? I mean, I think so. Like Will said, there's still some variables that you've got to try and understand, which is things like, you know, was the level of the queues that we had this year, which were small, because there wasn't actually that many people buying compared to the previous year because they were bringing food. And they just didn't want to wait, not realising that the problem would have been fixed. So by fixing that next year, does that mean you'll get a big surge of people who don't bring food? So you've got to add that into the equation. So I think what we've done together is we've put a real good balance of fee street units in there. I've put in a backup plan so that if it's busier than expected because people are eating, I can increase the capacities if I need to, kind of almost immediately within the time frame of just getting staff to site. And then he's got a really nice mix of independent traders in there as well, which drive, some real good authenticity into the foods they've got in there. So, like, for example, the Caribbean trader are Caribbeans, or from Caribbean descent. So, I think they were even playing reggae music and everything else. It was got real authenticity about it. So I really like the balance that they've got in there, because, you've got you've got us delivering good quality food, making sure the volumes are there, and then you've got a whole range of other, good quality independents that they've worked with now for a couple of years. So they've managed to work out which ones are the reliable ones, which ones are not going to let them down, and which ones are the ones worth working with. And I think they're at a good place now. So, you should see quite, I don't know whether you can improve on 99.7%, but you obviously can, but there isn't much to go, is there really there? But
no, yeah, it was really, really, really good. I mean, the feedback's just been nice. You couldn't have asked for more than this year. It was a big winning moment for our team. As I say, I've been there since the very first one, where it was 500 people in a field. So's Bryn, so's Alan, so's ABR. Lots of them have. And to think where it was to where it was this year, it's amazing. It's all been quite not organic. People have worked really hard, but it's felt very natural and like it was just meant to happen.
What are your plans for the future?
It's a good question. We talk about that a lot. I think one of the best things about the show is the audience. So that kind of respectful adventure bike riding audience that is, being rewarded, which they haven't necessarily been by the motorcycle industry. If you look at the motorcycle industry at the moment, it's sports bikes. The guys with the money, spending money on brand new bikes, tend to be riding adventure bikes because they're more comfortable and suit the sort of riding they want to do. So we're rewarding those guys still, and we want to keep growing that because that audience is just really great to work with. They're all such great blokes. And there's not just blokes, there's some women, but it's now 93% men, I think. And so we want to keep that and grow that properly. But it'd also be nice to open it up and get more people excited about adventure biking. So we talk about, opening the doors up and letting more people kind of come and experience it and get involved and have intuition for first-time riders. But for next year, I think we want to keep it as it was this year, bigger, better, and maybe look to new plans and get people excited about motorcycling and interested in motorcycling down the road. But for now, I think we've got something really special that we want to keep as it is.
So you mentioned about bringing more people into motorcycle riding. How do you plan on doing that?
I don't, through things like this, I think, not this particular podcast, but our podcast is informative, helpful information, just like this one, and making it accessible for people to learn about why they'd want to make it interesting and exciting. Ewan McGregor started the adventure bike craze with. Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman, I should say.
I'd love that show.
Great show. And lots of people do. And you don't have to like motorbikes to be into it, but you can't finish watching it and think, I'd love to ride around the world on a motorcycle. So, we want to do something that is interesting and exciting and entertaining and great music, great food, a wonderful venue. You could take your wife or your kids or whoever, have a great time there, and they could walk away thinking, I want to get into biking now. It doesn't have to be burger vans, car parks, sleeping under tarpaulins and in ditches. It can be a bit more luxurious. So that's the plan. Just
kind of what ABR is as well, isn't it? Really, they've removed a lot of they've looked at a lot of festivals and gone, well, what are the negatives here? And it's kind of poor quality food. Takes too long to get served, horrendous toilets, and there's just endless amounts of luxury toilet trailers there. So you're not going to the toilet in some horrendous hole. That 50,000 people have gone and used before you. Yeah,
if anyone's ever been to Leeds or Reading Festival.
It's proper wedding grade toilets, which is really important to most people, I think. You know what I mean? It's something that matters. So you're absolutely right. I mean, even camping, trying to get somebody to come and camp for 3 days or 3 nights. I don't want to do that, and I work there. So we're looking at there's amazing glamping opportunities next year. There's a guy that will assemble your tents. You don't have to do that bit. It'll also have an airbed blown up for you when you get there. So
how do you find that guy? What kind of job advert is that?
It's not me. I'll just tell you now. I'm just letting you know.
He's a completely independent company, and
he's a guy that really loves putting tents up.
Tents up. Yeah, he's a lovely bloke. His name's Will as well, actually. And he the first night I didn't realise I was going to be camping there. I thought I was going to go home. It was a Wednesday night, so the night before it all started. But we had an influencer who had flown over from Canada. Chap called Ryan F9, really great guy, and I didn't really feel right just leaving him up there on his own. So I stayed the evening with him, messaged Will, and he hadn't put any of the airbeds up. So he turned up, drove all the way back from Birmingham or wherever he was from, down to Ragley Hall, and he had the airbed with him, but he forgot a pump. So he was like, looked at me, he said, have you got a pump? I said, why would I have a pump on me? And he had to, like, I had to sleep on the floor that night. So I had a terrible start to the festival. He had a pump the second day. But yeah, it was tough. I don't want to camp either. So yeah, anything like that we can do just to make it more appealing and enjoyable. We just want people to have a great time.
There's loads of other stuff in there though, isn't there? So like, for example, like my kids came, you know, and the wife came, my father-in-law came, my mother-in-law came, and you know, my father-in-law was big into bikes, but he used to be into sports bikes many years ago, not adventure bikes necessarily. So he was the only one out of the lot that was a bike fan. Obviously, my son, because he's 6, so you know, I think all boys at 6 love bikes. You know, well, to be honest, my daughter does as well. To be honest, but they're not. You know, they wouldn't be going there for that directly.
Didn't you buy them a couple of little motocross bikes?
Yeah, they both.
Like
they both got electric motocross bikes, and they love them, and they love blasting them around. So there was an interest there. That's one of the reasons I said, why didn't you just bring them and see how they get on? And they all came. But actually, what happened is my mother-in-law, who you know is absolutely not a fan of bikes, you know, my wife is just not a fan of bikes. They both said they had a really good time because there's loads of bands on. You know, so you've got the whole element of it just being like a music festival. There's loads of entertainment. The bands are going all day pretty much. So there's non-stop music on stage. There was like, you know, there was almost a demo machine that shows you how to do wheelies on a bike, and like it, you know, it tilts up. You know, cool. So my son was loving that. He's just watching them doing it. You know, and people are queuing up to have a go on it. So there was just loads of different things that you can do that even if you're not really into bikes, were just really fun. You know,
there was water sports out on the lake. There was paddle boarding and kayaking and canoeing. We had axe throwing and spear throwing. Yeah. It's all things that just to make it feel like a great time, you know. And that's going back to your question about how you get people into motorcycling through it. Give them a great time and associate motorcycling with something fun, not dirt and oil and horrible stuff. So yeah, it was really good.
So what was it like for you, Ryan, when you first came into contact with ABR? What was it like for you as an operator dealing with a company like ABR?
You know what? If I'm honest with you, probably what actually happened was there was a lady working with us previously. She dealt with ABR all the way through, and so I didn't have that much dealing with the very first booking. And then I don't know whether I think we were actually speaking before COVID. And I think that's what happened. And then I think it was paused because of COVID. Then our first gig ended up being the one straight after COVID. And I think with the initial me not speaking directly to ABR very much, and it all coming through the lady who worked here previously, and then COVID, and then going into it, I don't think I was fully aware of the scale of the festival was. So obviously, when we went into it, Adam and his team went there, you know, prepared to go there. And actually, for the capacity numbers that they were doing that particular year, the stock that we brought was suitable. But as Will mentioned earlier, the bikers are quite different. And actually, the volume of food that they went through was probably 60% higher than any other event we'd done of the same numbers. And it was a combination of the fact that they're on bikes, and they, you know, they're not carrying loads of food with them. Also, the fact that they're trialling bikes, so they get up early in the morning because they need to be booked into trial bikes, so they want breakfast. The breakfast starts very early. Then they come back kind of from those trials. Sometimes then they want coffee. They might have kind of like a brunch type of like snack type food. Then they get some food later in the afternoon. Others are coming back from further trials, so then they're getting lunch. Then what happens is it's kind of tea time, so they have dinner. And then actually after that, they go in the bar. So if you stay open, which we did, kind of once the bar is starting to slow down a little bit, next minute they'll want pizzas. So actually you end up doing kind of four or five times feed, you know, over the whole day. Whereas, you know, some other events you might just trade 5 hours and you might get one hit out of it. So it really caught us off guard. And, you know, when I had to sit in the boardroom with Alan, I'd never met Alan before. And I'll tell you how the first thing that Alan said to me when we met him was, because I'd always dealt with others of the senior team at ABR. And actually, Alan, I didn't really know what, who, or what ABR was owned by. Was it a group of companies? Was it an individual? I just didn't know. So I'd only just dealt with some senior people at ABR. And I didn't know about Alan. And then, we went there and we were selling out. The queues were too long. We weren't ready. I was actually away that weekend and my team were there. I was getting phone calls saying we are running out of stock. We're closing units. And, they're saying the team at ABR are absolutely not happy about this, So I quickly had to come racing back myself, load up vehicles with stock, deliver it to site, try and get them back open again. So we're doing everything we can because it just completely caught us off guard because we'd got 3 days worth of food and we were selling 3 days worth of food in one day because of obviously what I talked about. And ultimately, afterwards, I thought to myself, okay, right, well, we definitely under-egged that and we got that wrong. So, the way we are, I sent the guys an email at ABR and just said, look, I got it wrong. I've completely under-egged it. This is my bad. I can fix it. Now I understand it. I can certainly fix it. So if you're willing to have us back, I can sit down with you and for 2022, we'll knock this out the park. So I went to meet them and Alan came in the boardroom, and I'd never met him. And he said hello, but then afterwards he said, Ryan, I'm very, very disappointed. And it was the first thing he ever said to me because he's very to the point, isn't he? Yeah. But he's actually a great, great guy. Very, very fair, and probably one of the most fairest that I've worked with, to be honest. So, what he said realistically was just very honest, and I just took it on the chin. And since then, we've built a fantastic working relationship, and as Will said, we've gone away and got it right for this year. So, but yeah, he was certainly to the point when he first came in. Anyway,
it's like that. I think one of the things that was great working with you, and I think Alan appreciated because he's in the same position, is you own your business. Yeah, and it seems like a tiny thing, but if you can deal with somebody that can go, I will fix this. Yeah, it's on me. It's on my head now. And Alan's exactly the same. If I want to do something in that business, I only need one person's permission, and that's his. And it's the same kind of with you, Ryan. As we felt confident going forward, you were going to fix it, and I think he's always talks about it very fondly. And you got a lot of loyalty from him now. I don't think you'll ever have to worry about working one of our events.
Yeah, and you know what? Likewise, I feel there was a very strong working relationship built over 2 festivals. The only thing I'm concerned about is we took me out on one of those 4x4 buggies. So if he doesn't kill me, the working relationship will probably go on for several years. Because he got back, I had to pretend I wasn't frightened because obviously he's quite a big guy who rides motorbikes. So I was like, yeah, that was all right. No, I wasn't really bothered. I just was quickly trying to get out the cab as quickly.
He's nearly killed people. Did it? We used to have one with a platform in the back, and he'd have people stood on it, and he nearly rolled it a couple of times. It's unbelievably quick. Yeah. Just fearless, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was really fun, but there was like a sense of relief when we finished it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I thanked him, but I don't know why.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing about the festival I didn't mention earlier. There's a 22-kilometre off-road trail, which is unheard of in this country, really, and it goes around all the Ragley Hall Park and grounds and stuff like that. And we have Polaris were the main ones this year. Brought these off-roads. Like 4x4 all-terrain vehicles. That's the word I'm looking for.
I think I managed to get a couple of clips of them in our video of it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Really
So anyone
cool.
can have a go in those, and you can be a passenger or you can drive if you've got a license. And it's just an amazing thing to be able to do. I mean, parts of it. It's like you're in Canada or something like that. So that's another amazing thing about the event, but not the main thing.
Do you ride yourself?
I do. I fall off a lot, but yeah, I do. I say that I'll be 2 years next week since my last major accident, but I haven't fallen off since. Before that, it was probably once a week or so. I do, and I write in the magazine a little bit, which I quite like, and it's an amazing thing to be able to do. And I've ridden a lot of the new bikes that have come out over the last few years. I've been on bike launches and gone on some amazing trips as well. So. Yeah, it's an incredible thing, but I never grew up wanting to do it. I met the guys at ABR. I was selling on another brand of ours, Adventure Travel, and then moved across to ABR, and I just got the opportunity to do my bike test and thought I'd do that. And then it's all kind of come in. So I'm somebody that would never have considered motorcycling that got into it, and I love it. It is great fun. It's a great community to be part of. Everyone's right behind you. There's a brotherhood for everybody that rides a bike. If you see another bike come down the road, you nod at each other. It's just a great kind of community to be a part of, but I would never have considered it had I not been forced into it. So that's one of the things I'm hoping the festival will do for people is get more people interested invested in it.
And so you mentioned another brand. Talk to me through that.
Yeah, so Alan actually started the business 27 years ago. ABR's only been around 12 years. So the first 15 years was a magazine called Adventure Travel, and Alan started it because it was very much a vocational thing. He had a young family at the time, so he was obviously making money, but he had a sales background, and he decided that he wanted to travel the world, climb mountains, and also provide for his family. So he started a magazine, and he spent the morning selling all the adverts, and the afternoon writing the stories. Which he plays it down when you talk to him, but it's an incredible thing to be able to do. Really amazing, because you are one or the other. You know, you are either a salesperson or you're a writer. Very rarely you're both. And he did it for 15 years, and then he had a motorcycle accident and thought, I'll start that motorcycle magazine now that I've always wanted to do. And since ABR came along and had the success that it's had, because there was nothing for adventure riders before, it's been a proper business, I think, more than a vocational way of doing the things that he wants to do. But yeah, it's evolved now into Wired for Adventure. It's got a magazine, and we're launching a YouTube channel for it, and a podcast will follow, I'm sure. It's got great sort of social media numbers all around the world. The magazine is probably one of the best produced magazines I've ever seen, and it gets a huge amount of support from the industry, and a lot of people read it. But it hasn't got an event yet, and that's something that we're working on. I think it'll probably be 2024 now. It definitely won't be next year. But we want to do something that gets people outdoors doing stuff. You know, Wired for Adventure is a broad term because everybody is in some way seeking adventure, whether that adventure is, you know, getting out your bedroom because you've not left it in 6 months, or traveling the world. It doesn't really matter. Everyone is seeking excitement in their life, I think. So it's just about identifying it, finding out what inspires you, and doing more of that.
So do you feel that that's a bit of a reflection on the current state of the world? Really, you mentioned you may have been joking, but you mentioned someone not leaving their bedroom for 6 months.
It's so important. It's everything about Wired for Adventure is about making your life better and making the world better, and getting outside but doing it respectfully, doing things in an environmentally friendly way, protecting your physical and mental health. It really, really is important. And it's also about, everything to do with Wild Adventure is about good value. And then when we have the festival, we want it to be family friendly, bring your kids along, not pay an absolute fortune, but when you're there, do amazing things and have incredible experiences. You know, how many parents will finish the 6 weeks holidays gutted that they didn't do more? It's probably every single parent in the country, because they didn't find the time, or they didn't have the money, or they didn't do whatever. But we want to take that away. It's going to be the May Bank holiday weekend, I'd have thought, in 2024. We can take that guilt away from parents, then that would be amazing, because we'll just give them a place to take their kids and have a great time.
Interesting. So what kind of things Adventure Bike Ride is quite clearly about bikes.
Yeah.
And so you're obviously, for that you would sell. You get people in like Catering, and that's the reason why they'd be there, so they can sell bikes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What's the commercial sort of angle for this?
Well, I think with the nature of it, it lends itself to sort of brand activation better. So creating amazing content where you zip wire off the top of Ragley Hall and you land on a Fee Street logo. You know, you can imagine what you could do with that kind of content. It'd be amazing. So we're going to bring people in to sponsor the activities and do the different things. So, open fire baking could be something, and I'm sure there's people that would want to get involved in that. You could also have face painting and artistic things and things like that. You could also have kayaking on the lake and orienteering, or Alan's really, really, really keen. I think he's absolutely right. If you could do some sort of, we want it to be sustainable and environmentally friendly, but if you do like electric quad bike safaris, where kids could have a go and go out with their parents and just go have a great time. When you went to PGL as a kid and you did all these amazing things and your parents never even saw photos of it, we want the parents to be part of it this year or next year or year after that, actually. So yeah, that's the plan. We just want everything to be fun, and we want kids to enjoy a weekend outside, as opposed to, do you remember being a kid and never having to climb a mountain with your dad? And halfway up, you were moaning about going back down again. I remember climbing Snowdon, and my sister moaned the entire way up. And my dad agreed to get the train back down, and then the train was closed, so she moaned all the way back down again. We don't want that. We want kids begging their parents to go back. So that's the plan.
Cool. So would you have businesses, say, that made kayaks or?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you get some really natural ones, really natural relationships. If you look at ABR again, there's some really obvious natural relationships, like Purity sponsored the bar. They make beer. Makes perfect sense. And it'd be the same there. So a kayaking company could very easily host and, run kayaking experiences for people. But there's also people that, aren't necessarily into the outdoors but would benefit massively from the industry, that would want the opportunity to promote health and mental well-being and great times and enjoyment, and put smiles on children's faces, children that may not get the opportunity that often to do things like this, and then also promote sustainability and the environment and living in a more sustainable way, and educating people on how to do that. So there will be some companies that maybe just want to be associated with it but aren't necessarily in that audience, and there'll also be companies that lend themselves to that type of environment really, really well. Kayaking would be a great one.
Camping and it's all of those type companies, isn't it? Because actually it's probably worth saying actually, because I don't think we talked about it, but there was a huge electric bike part of this year at ABR, wasn't there?
Yeah, bigger than ever before. Yeah, electric, obviously we all know the way it's been forced to go. I sound like I was objecting to it then. The way that the government has kind of said, right, okay, we're going to stop making petrol and diesel powered vehicles by, I think it's 2035 or whatever it is. So we know there's going to be new options available. Electric's obviously one of them. What's really, really fascinating, I think, is that there is only one major manufacturer that currently has that's Harley Davidson, has an electric bike in production.
So this goes back to Ewan McGregor and Charlie Bowman and their latest.
Their latest one, they did the long way up on live wires. And it is an amazing, but I've had to go on a live wire. I had to go in Spain. It was unbelievable. Really, really incredible machine. There is no reason anybody wouldn't enjoy it. It is quite expensive. I kind of understand that bit, but it is really good fun. But they just haven't really taken off yet. And they certainly haven't got the support from manufacturers, unless there's lots going on behind the scenes that I don't know about. But what that's given way to is lots of smaller companies to get into that audience. So Zero Motorcycles are probably one of the better known ones. They do a few different variants of electric bikes. There's Energica that were there at the festival this year. There was Maving that were there at the festival this year. Maving were incredibly popular. Everyone wanted to have a go. Unfortunately, they were only exhibiting and trading, but they weren't actually doing test rides. But yeah, there was some incredible electric bikes, and it's going to be something that everyone has to do eventually. But there's some really young, new companies that have broken into the market. I don't think they existed 10 years ago, and now they're going to be big players hopefully soon. I
imagine there's some real logistical challenges to making electrical vehicles work out in a festival, especially somewhere like Ragley Hall.
It's difficult. Well, they go out on the roads. They do road test rides. So, because otherwise they could only they need a car park. You can't really ride them on grass. There's a couple of off-road options, but they're just so heavy, the electric bikes, that it's hard to, if you dropped it, you're not going to pick it back up again. I don't think there's a lot of electric. There are some electric, sort of small electric bikes, but I don't think they've necessarily got the range to get around the trail. So it's really fascinating, I think. There's so much happening in that market, and I think next year there's a proper electric Energica, and that's a proper adventure bike, and that will that'll lend itself to going around the trail and doing some road riding as well. So it's going to start happening more and more and more. And there'll probably be Ducati and Triumph. I know Triumph are working on electric bikes at the moment, so Ducati probably are. I know KTM have some smaller off-road bikes that they do electric, so it'll just keep happening more and more, I think. And there'll be loads of them before long.
I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. You mentioned earlier about working with influencers and creators.
Yes.
What's your approach to working with certain influencers and creators, and what are you looking for?
It's funny, isn't it? We talk about it all the time, because some of the biggest numbers actually have the wrong sort of people. So that if you've got a great example would be that you get content creators that are very, very pretty young girls that probably have a massive following, but they're going to sell to people that want makeup and things like that. They're not going to sell to adventure bike riders. So you have to find something that's really, really relevant. You have to find people that are really engaged, people that understand what we're trying to do and suit the audience, and have some trust, some trust in their following, I guess. It's a trial and error thing. I think that's the way that we found it. We found some that we work with, and they're just brilliant. They're right on board. They work really, really hard. They do everything that you ask them to do. Their response is brilliant. They sell tickets. Everything's great. And then some of them, I think they just sort of turn up for a bit of a free weekend out, and that's not really how we can grow the show. So, and those relationships you just park and politely move on. So that's the approach that we have. But it's easy to track, I think, how they're doing, how their posts are performing, how many of their followers are coming, how successful that they're because lots of them give talks at the show and stuff. How popular was it? If there's nobody sat in the audience, it's probably not worth having them back. But yeah, we've got some really great ones, and then, the girl on the bike. There was Ryan F9, Elspeth Beard. She's an author. She's not a digital influencer at all. But the Missenden Flyer, Nick Sanders. I'm going to forget people if I keep listing, so I will stop. But they were just awesome, and they got so stuck in. What was great about the show is they were sat watching the bands with us in the evening. So people were sat with their heroes and their idols, and it was just awesome to watch. It was really, really cool to be integrated with these celebrities, because that's exactly what they are to that particular audience. Ryan F9's got 1.5 million YouTube subscribers. He's a big deal all around the world, and he was sat having a beer with people that have just popped up the road for a motorcycle festival. It was great.
I think that probably says a lot about the community, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it does. It really, really does. Yeah.
So you mentioned as well you've got YouTube channels for both brands, and
we do. Yeah.
Do you have podcasts for both brands as well?
Well, the YouTube channel for Wild for Adventure hasn't actually started yet. Neither is the podcast, but it is coming. It's definitely in the works. We've had meetings. We've got people that are interested in supporting it. It's going to happen. ABR is established and brilliant. We've got a great team. We're just having a video studio built on the side of the office. That's how well it's going. It's going to be something that we do more and more and more. Video content is a far easier, enjoyable way of absorbing content than maybe magazines, but the magazine audience will always be the highest quality. They're going to be the biggest fans of what we're doing, and I think that older adventure bike rider does like that sort of audience, like that sort of content, sorry. And it's going well. Again, it was trial and error, seeing what worked and what didn't, and what we found with YouTube is you can't really predict it that well. Some of the videos that we thought, let's just do it because it looks good, they did really, really well, and some of them that we put days and days and days of work into and we thought would do brilliantly didn't. And it tends to be a bit of a hit and miss thing, but the key is just keep doing it, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, and then promote it well and market the content that you create. And it's absolutely flown so far. The podcast got a couple of thousand regular listeners. Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Nice. So tell me a little bit more about this video studio. I'm very jealous.
You're going to ask me to build one, aren't you?
Yeah, it's the foundations have been dug out today. So that's how it was planned about a year ago. We got the planning through, but it started today. It's going to have enough space to get bikes in and wheel them in and out and be able to talk about them and talk around them and do a bit more with them than we can currently do, because you can't wheel bikes in and out through doorways and stuff. So that will be really, really helpful for us. We've got a big turntable so we can spin it around and make them look cool. It'll make life so much easier because everything will be set up ready to go. We don't have to walk in, set up cameras and backdrops and all that sort of stuff. It will be ready. We can do a podcast just by walking in, sitting down, turning the camera and the mics on. That's going to make life a lot better. So it's about efficiency and easiness more than it is about showing off too much. But I don't really know what their plans are. I don't get that involved.
Interesting. It sounds a lot more like a TV studio than it seems like the two kind of industries are kind of melding together because TV consumption is obviously dropping massively, especially among a younger generation.
Yeah,
definitely. And obviously YouTube and everything else. Like you were chatting about Seb earlier and about him. He'll flick YouTube on rather than watching the telly.
Yeah,
and I think that's becoming the kind of norm, and I feel like both of those things are kind of melding together. TV's kind of falling off. Has that been a part of your approach?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the best content that we do is the organic stuff. So if you're on the back of a bike and you're talking with your GoPros on and you're all mic'd up and you're riding it, and James or Bryn who do those videos, we're doing a series called The First Rise, and it's literally the first time they swing their leg over a bike and take it out. and their reactions are genuine. You know, the issues that they have, the response to the power, everything is genuine. And that's the best stuff that I think that we do. But that's not in a video studio. So the video studio is more for your podcasts and maybe a bit of, 5 things we love about such and such, or showing a new product or something like that. And then you cut to maybe some B-roll of it in action. That's what that's for. But the best content is out there. You know, getting out and standing in the field and talking about, it's putting the bikes in their natural habitats, or climbing a mountain, or going wild swimming with Wild for Adventure. That's the content we want to be making. We don't want to be sat inside chatting, but there is a necessity to it. Back to your question. I've gone off topic there a bit. That we definitely have noticed. I definitely do not watch telly live ever, unless it's sport. I will not watch any live telly. It's all done through YouTube. It's all done on Netflix or whatever. It's all on demand. And it's just such a growing space. We wanted to be in it, and a couple of years ago we made the decision to get stuck in, and we have, and it's going really well.
Nice. Ryan, do you have any questions in terms of ABR and how you can improve? Well, obviously you've been through this already in terms of improving what you're providing for the festival. Is there anything that you thought of that maybe you haven't spoken about at all?
No, not really, because we've spoke about quite a lot, and actually, we put 2 years into this, and we both had to make changes on both sides to kind of fine tune it and get to the point where we think it's right, and we think that 2023 is going to be that. And then obviously with the variances we talked about, we're just putting in a slight backup plan in case there's like a slightly bigger wave with the additional numbers being added, and possibly people going, well, we won't bother bringing any food because there's no queues now. But we've tweaked more than we've talked about, really. So like, for example, Will sent me over the new shape. He's changing the shape slightly, and like we're trying to make it so that, there was a few layouts for this year that almost created a slight wall, didn't the Will, to the bar area. It divided atmosphere almost a little bit. So the guys have changed that to make it so that it's accessible this way, so the layouts are the other way around. More aisles and so on. So it's kind of just been a work in progress, really, and there's a lot been changed, and there's a lot been tweaked and worked through, from everything from kind of layouts to kind of footfall to back of house to trader numbers to kind of everything, really. So we there probably isn't anything we haven't discussed, I would imagine, at this stage, because we've pretty much covered it all over a two year and 2 event kind of working relationship, really. You
mentioned layouts, and obviously that's something that you have to go through with markets in Stratford and all over the country and different festivals. Yeah. How do you find that layouts impact the way that how much you can sell and how you can interact with your customers?
It's absolutely key, to be honest. Me and we were even talking on email the other day, just about tweaking, the positioning of one of our units to be able to be on a corner and little things like this, because it's really key. I mean, I use this example a lot, but many years ago when I was, still working on the store myself, it was just my little business, and I was going out to the market and trying to make some money. There was a pitch next to me that was... these were 3 metre pitches, and this was next to me. And the traders that seemed to be in that pitch seemed to be different every week. So I grabbed the market manager and I said, is that a regular pitch, or is that like just a casual pitch? And they said, no, that's just a casual pitch. It's not let. I said, well, can I switch my pitch for that one and just have that one every week? And he was like, yeah, if you want. Why do you want to do that? So you're right there. And even the market manager didn't really understand it. And I moved there because it was a 4-day-a-week market. So I said, well, can I move there tomorrow? He said, if you want to, yeah. So he put the casual traders where I would go, which was just anyone who turned up on the day looking for a pitch. And he moved me into that one, and I doubled my take pretty much immediately, which at the time was probably... for a little market, was probably about 800 quid a week, of actual income, So for a little business, it was a huge amount of money, and it was kind of ridiculous that something so minor, but it's really not minor. So, if you don't quite get it right, you end up with dead spots and dead corners, or the natural flow of the public will go the wrong direction. So anybody kind of over this side will lose out from that. So, and it's really hard to really actually even understand that. You can plan it and go, okay, well, I think it will work well like this. Then you throw all the people in there and actually go, well, that's not gone anywhere near what I thought it was going to be. And so it tends to be a case of like really just making the best educated guess that you can get to the planning of it, and make adjustments accordingly, which is what the guys have done. And I'm fairly confident by looking at it for this year that so for next year, that I think it's it's looking really good.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are some things we knew we would be able to nail, and that was getting the industry on board, because I'd been doing that with the magazine and everything else for years before, and people were doing that with ABR for years before I was even there, and selling the tickets, because we've been talking to that audience and getting them excited and stuff like that for years. We knew what they liked, we knew what they were interested in. So we knew those things we could nail. There were some things none of us had ever done before, and layout, catering, bars, things like that, none of us had ever even thought about it. So we've had to rely on experts, and you still learn as you go, but you bring people in like Ryan, you learn who you can trust, and I think we've got some of our own experts now. We know what works and what's going to be successful, and what we need to change for next year. We've made some massive changes to where the traders are all going. They're all going up in the same fields in front of the hall, but we know that in itself will now become an attraction, because some people will go around every single stand and say hello to people. That is going to be a really exciting, busy area now just on its own, whereas before, this year, we had them spread out everywhere, and you had some quiet areas, some busy areas. Now we're going to keep it all busy, because they're all going to be in one place. So yeah, there are some things that you learn as you go, and some things you rely on people for advice, and there are some things that we brought to the table from the beginning. But layout's it's changed every single year, and it will probably change for the next couple of years. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah. So what are the kind of things that affect what are the things that kind of affect the flow of where people go and what attracts people? What can you think of any variables off the top of your head that kind of?
For us, it's easy. I know that everybody is going to go to the BMW Motorrad stands and the Ducati stands, and they're all going to go to the Harley Davidson stand. Everyone's going to go check out those new bikes. So when it comes to planning traders, you just spread those guys out and make sure you use those to drag people through the rest of the traders that maybe people wouldn't check out but will be interested in. I don't know what it's like for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same format as a shopping centre. I gave this example before, didn't I?
Yeah.
And it's anchoring kind of, a space. Doesn't matter whether that's a shopping centre, a festival site, or anything else. It's anchoring those key weak spots with big brands that will pull. So, I gave this example previously in a podcast where shopping centres would always anchor, with things like John Lewis or something where and actually your automatic assumption is when you go down to John Lewis, this must be the kind of premium end of the shopping centre. You'll probably find it's the weak end of the shopping centre. It's just you feel like it is because now there's attendance down there because it's pulled all the public down there. I said I was at a conference recently, and it was an actual conference that was mostly about kind of these new state-of-the-art indoor markets that they're building. And because we are, looking at moving into those spaces from a contractual perspective, I wanted to go there, I wanted to see about them, I wanted to kind of network. And I was speaking to one of the architects that does most of these, and he was even talking about anchoring it with toilets. So we're going to put the toilets right at the back, so that actually when people want to come in and just use the toilets, they're going to go right to the back, and halfway through there, they might go, oh, you know what, I needed a new pair of socks, I'll grab them as well. So it's kind of like exactly as Will's saying, really anchoring those spaces. And actually, quite often, my dad gave me this example, and my dad's 30 years into market management. So, building temporary structures in a space is what he's done for 30 years, and there probably isn't anyone. He does consultations for local authorities all over, and he described it to me one day as you've got to treat the public like water. And if you don't allow them to flow like water, they won't. So, and I even set up one day, again, this was kind of quite a few years ago, I was quite inexperienced. And there was a market that was running kind of down, and just off it was this lovely kind of water fountain. And I said, am I allowed to use this space as well? Because my two pitches were kind of like backing onto this waterfall, and I had to leave, this fountain, and I had to leave a space. And he said, yeah, you can use all that space. I said, okay, so I decided I was going to set up the stalls inside from the actual kind of main alleyway, and then on the outside I was going to put the seating area. And I thought, well, that's great, because they'll see that seating area, they'll love it. And I created two kind of 90-degree cafe barrier screens with the seating in, and you had to come into it to get to the food stalls which were here. And he came walking along, and he said to me, why have you set up like that? He was like, you're going to do your brains there, that won't work. I said, why? I was like, it looks great. And he said, no, it looks great, but he said, they're going to flow straight down there. That won't work. And it annoyed me a little bit, so I just ignored him. And sure enough, was doing no sales, and it was packed. And he come back later on, he said to me, why have you not adjusted it? And I was just like, I'll be honest, because it really annoyed me, and I just quite like how it looks. He was like, do you mind if I just adjust something? And he got the seating area, and he adjusted the 90-degree angle into a round shape. And I watched him doing it, and I thought, well, that doesn't look as good, you know. And that's all I was really bothered about. And then all of a sudden, they just started flowing in. And I could not, honestly, it flabbergasted me. I started doing sales. Now, it wasn't as good as if I'd moved the stall straight onto the front, but instantly we started taking money when we just weren't taking any. And he just said to me, he said, I've been doing the job 30 years. He was like, trust me, I know how the flows work. And it was something as simple as creating a 90-degree angle or adjusting that 90-degree angle into a round shape so that they flowed in there. And it just was something about the psychology behind, you know, supermarket layout and retail sales and where they position everything and how they get you to look. It's just such a science that unless you've got millions and millions of pounds to put into research, most of the time what you've just got to have to do is have a go at it and adjust it when you get it wrong. That's
so true. I mentioned having to change the bar for next year. It was brilliant, and hats off to Nigel and his team at Moon Gazing, but they did a fantastic job. But you saw there was one really long bar. We had this massive tent. There's a massive long bar. The longest, I think it was about 40 metres, this bar was. It had machines all the way down it that could pour 12 pints at once. It had the biggest team in terms of staff. And we had this tiny, short bar. It wasn't tiny, it was still big, but it was probably 15 metres as opposed to 40. And that bar was always really, really busy. And if you walked down to the other bar, you would just get a beer straight away. Yeah. But for some reason, people kept going up to the top. And you couldn't, it was up the top of the hill as opposed to down the bottom of the hill. I don't know what it was. Nobody can quite put their finger on why. Yeah. But everybody went to that top bar. And I think next year we just swap the two bars around and have the big one. Nobody needs to know why it is the case. But it is, it's just going to, it'll be something really slight that we didn't foresee.
You just won't predict that, will you? Will?
No, exactly.
There's never in a million years you'd be able to predict that at all. So, you know, there's so much behind it, and the psychology, and just, you know, I just think it like I say, unless you've got a camera supermarket that spends millions of pounds a year, you know, evaluating that data, you got to just have a go and see what happens.
Do you find traders like Ducati and like BMW and who have big retail spaces, do you find that they have any input like that?
Yeah, they've all got something to say, that's for sure. They're great. They really are helpful. I tell you, the one thing we get is everybody wants us to be successful, whether it's Ryan and the caterers or whether it's the industry, or I think I've had one person not referred to my calls, and in all these years, and it's great. But they all have their own view on how it should be. A lot of them are right, but there's so much that we're actually capable of achieving. They all have very different ways of operating, so we have to find a healthy balance. It tends to be about kind of going around speaking to all of them, getting everybody's feedback and finding out the least objective or objectional way to move forwards. Everyone's
really trying to funnel people into their own stand.
Of course they are. And they all want to be in at the place. What's really helpful though is they all think the best place is different, so they can all have what they consider to be the best place in most circumstances. Yamaha this year had a new bike come out, so they were amazing. You know, they did all sorts. They were doing free bike repairs for Tenere riders. Tenere's their adventure bike. They sponsored the main speaker tent, and they had an incredible exhibition of all the Teneres through the years in there. They had brought some of their own speakers down. They had a private Tenere camping area. They had a Tenere ticket, so you could actually come and you'd get a T-shirt and a free drink and stuff. They were just awesome. So they were there in a massive way. Harley Davidson have been there in a massive way the last couple of years because they had their first ever adventure bike come out. And then Ducati and BMW and all the brands that you associate with adventure biking are always there in a big way. And you, without them, the show wouldn't be what it is. And we don't live to serve them, but we do try and make it as successful for them as we can. And I think so far, we've never had one of them say that they didn't have a good show. And the only thing they regret is that they couldn't bring more bikes.
They bring the wow factor, don't they?
They do.
I think for you, when you go into festival sites, especially, you know, I see so many that you immediately know whether you're dealing with a large-scale festival or whether you're dealing with kind of like, you know, one of your kind of typical small-scale like local festivals. And, you know, like, for example, when I went into Creamfields for the first time and I arrived there to set up, you know, there was 125 articulated lorries on site that same day because they have to count them in. So kind of security were like, we've currently got 125 on site. We need 3 out before you can go in, and they're making you queue, and you're going through the security, and and although ABR's on a smaller scale, the size of the brands they have in there, when you come in, there's an enormous, unbelievably glossy, articulated lorry, massive, polished paintwork, that's owned by those big brands, and it's the first thing you see when you come in. These impressive lorries, huge bike displays. There was one brand there that built an entire decked area just for the weekend. Ducati.
There was something like £20,000 just in wood.
Yeah,
that's how expensive there was. Yeah. And it's all because their MD doesn't like having motorbikes on grass. And no one can understand why. Their adventure bikes are supposed to go on grass. But I tell you what, he was right. It looked amazing.
It looked amazing, didn't it?
Nobody walked past the Ducati stand and didn't go, wow. They brought their own stage. They had Carl Fogarty, who was king of the jungle there. He was awesome. He stayed and wanted to stay an extra day and was having beers with people and taking photos with people in the evening. He was awesome. It shows how much they value what we do and why we should definitely listen to their...
Yeah, I think they see just the same as the rest of us, but obviously these are global brands. They see the potential of ABR, even as a new festival. It's only been going a few years. You can see where it's gone from a couple hundred people in a barbecue to what it is now. Those brands see the value in that, and they know that, that they're already doing really well from it. So, and the guys have increased numbers year on year, so it's only going to get better. For ABR, they bring the wow factor because they come with £20,000 worth of decking and £250,000 lorry and
it's amazing. It is really amazing what they put on. I mean, just the insurance that it must cost to have all those test rides. I think there's 700-800 test rides per manufacturer over the weekend. It's huge numbers. It might be per day actually. 700-800. It's huge amounts. And I was just thinking then. You reminded me. We were bringing over lots of people from Europe. Lots of people coming from. There's nothing like the Adventure Bike Rider Festival anywhere else in the world. Nothing quite of the size. Nothing that's such a celebration and has the feel that we have. There are other things that would think that they're like it, but they're not. It is different. And I've been to them, and I know that they're not the same. So we get people flying in from Holland and or riding over. We had people ride up from South Africa this year. Imagine that as a few months on the back of a bike just to come to the ABR Festival. And we're going to next year promote it in America and get people to come over from America. We really want to do that. Ryan F9 is massive in Canada, and he had an amazing time. So if he can do it, other people come.
What's your approach to getting people over from the States? Because obviously that's going to be quite an expensive trip.
It is. It absolutely is. But the thing with adventure biking is to have a £20,000 toy that you use 3 times a year. You've got a few quid. So a couple of grand on a flight and maybe making a couple of weeks of it as opposed to 3 days isn't necessarily that much of an objection for them. You've got to give them reason and getting their favourite people there. So getting the American influencers and Ryan's and if you could get, and he's never been, I don't know if he's ever even heard of it, if you could get Ewan McGregor there, they're all coming. Everyone's coming. They're all going to fly from all around the world because to spend the evening partying with Ewan McGregor is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So that's probably going to be the approach, is who we invite, the bands that we book. We have tribute bands, but the bands are all from that era that a 50, 60-year-old bloke is going to love. The Stones, The Who, U2, we had the Oasis, who are probably one of the youngest ones. We also had Fleetwood Mac. They were called Fleetwood Mads, which I thought was great. They were just awesome. All of the tribute bands were phenomenal, and it was like you were watching them. In fact, I had a meeting earlier today with Moto Mondo, who do a small adventure bike. And they had an argument with somebody on their stand over whether it was the real AC/DC or not. I think the lead singer of AC/DC had died about 2 months before, so it definitely wasn't him. But they were insisting it was. So it's all about the attractions that you put on, the people that you get there, and how you market it to those areas. It's easy to market over there. You just choose a different audience on social media or Google or whatever. But it's about putting the content into the advert that is going to get their attention.
Is most of your advertising, is it Facebook, is it Google? Is it
the best thing, and it's the one thing that I feel so proud of from the festival, is the most common way that people said that they'd come across at the ABR Festival was through the magazine. It was about 40%. Then there was 20% word of mouth. So that was 60% of that marketing, budget. Was all organic stuff that we were already doing. People, it's old-fashioned, offline, talking, bringing your mates, reading magazines. And that's amazing, I think, because actually, we do the Facebook stuff. We do search engine optimization and content marketing plans and video and pay-per-click stuff. We do it all. Of course we do. We're not silly. We're really good at digital marketing. But actually what was most popular was none of that. And I think that's a reflection of the audience, but also a reflection of, you know, the times a little bit. And people they do like magazines still. They do still have conversations. You do still take your mates along to do these things. If I'm booking something, I phone all of my mates, say, are you up for this? And that was the most popular way that people got there, was the magazine and word of mouth. That's
really cool. I think that's probably a really good place to end it. How can everyone find information on Adventure Bike Rider?
abrfestival.co.uk or adventurebikerider.com. It's all online. We've got Facebook channels and all that sort of stuff as well. So YouTube channels. Find us and follow us and get in touch. Drop me a message as well.
Perfect. And where do we find your podcast?
It's on the YouTube channel, but it's also on Spotify, Google, and a few others. I've forgotten which ones.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Will. Cheers,
no worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Will.